Hi everyone, hope all is well and welcome back. I'm Mitra. I'm so called your expert of the Asiatic global order, Middle East, Asia, terrorism, and such. I apologize for not coming yesterday. I just have been swamped. And besides, I want to give you a couple of days or so to digest what we talked about. I also like to say thank you for those who have subscribed to me and who are following me on different on Substack and everything else. And for those who are new to this one, I'd like to say welcome. And please, if you like the show, don't forget to subscribe. Ladies and gentlemen, as I said before, I we are going to talk about what is happening in the Middle East and the war. But as I also said before, I am going to give you the Western, non Eurocentric, the global South perspective. And for me, that's important because not only it gives you a different perception of what's going on, but it also uh, gives you a better explanation of how you got there. So you can still, read Washington Post or New York Times or Atlantic, or and you still watch, the Fox or CNN. But the traditional Western media, I highly recommend you go beyond the traditional Western media. You can watch, Tucker Carlson and Judge Napolitano or Joe Rogan, and then go out and in addition to those, go beyond that and go through non-Western, non-Eurocentric news as well. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to discuss the war today, but I'm going to do different. I'm only going to discuss one country in particular. It's going to be very short today, and that country is Jordan. Why? Because, ladies and gentlemen, the Jordan you see today may not be the Jordan in several weeks. And if King Abdullah is replaced, not the Hashemite Kingdom, if King Abdullah is replaced, we will have certainly a different challenge for us in the Middle East that we do now. And in order to address that, I'm just going to pull you back to let you know what that means. We're all watching the news, reading all different things that despite the Iranians being hit, right? They're hitting back. They're doing massive damage to our bases, so much so that we are really in an extremely critical, dangerous position because those areas provides us with the military supplies we need to continue the war. But for me, what's important of that is the political ramification within the Arab world. And you would assume in the Arab world, because these are Iranians and they're attacking Arab countries, right? And their Arab leaders are upset, their population would be upset too. But that is not the case. In virtually almost all the Arab countries, a significant majority of populations are siding with Iran. Now, that doesn't mean they're pro Iranian government, not at all, but they're siding with Iran for several reasons. Number one, because of the Palestinian issue. The Iranians were the only ones standing up for the Palestinians, along with the Houthis and Hezbollah, while all the Arab leaders were virtually impotent or purposely did nothing. And then also, it's because they were attacked during the month of Ramadan, and they're in an honorable Islamic Arab culture. You just don't sit there where your enemy also attacks another Muslim nation. But then it also becomes they dare to stand up to the United States, right? They're standing up for the Muslim world. They're standing up against Israel, right? The Iranian leader died, standing up in his house while the Israeli leader fled to Germany. All of those matters. But in the case of Jordan, it's massively important because whether it's Jordan, whether it's Bahrain, by the way, whether it's Saudi Arabia, ladies and gentlemen, you must remember all of these nations are man made and they are recent. And these are all tribal nations. The significant are Sunni, not at all. The significant are Sunni ever. And they're tribal nations where the tribes in Jordan are the same tribes. Their cousins in Saudi Arabia, their cousins are in Bahrain, their cousins are in Kuwait. And so all of these tribes have brothers. And in the case of the case of Jordan, you see tremendous amount of anger. And that anger is because not only 50% of the population is Palestinian, but you have a king whose wife's supposed to be Palestinian, although she's not necessarily respected, or particularly when you compare it to the previous queen, but who has done nothing in diminishing the conflict. And from their perspective, I mean, not that they're supporting necessarily Iran attacking their bases, but what they're blaming the king is, if it wasn't for his agreement with the Americans, Jordan would not be attacked. They're also blaming the king by saying, you are using our space to attack another Muslim country while you were not using your military for protecting the Palestinians. So, what you have now, ladies and gentlemen, particularly for the past 7, 8 days, something that has not seen in decades, if not more. You have the major tribes, particularly Bani Hassan, which has been along with the Hawitad, which has been the backbone of the Hashemite kingdom, telling King Abdullah, okay, the Americans get to go, the military gets to go, and we'll support you, right? But we're not going to support anything else, right? We may support Jordan and you, but we're not going to support this war. And that's basically a code of saying either your kingdom or the Americans, right? And so, for the first time, ladies and gentlemen, you have rumors, not just rumors, in tribal meetings, they're on social media, they're on Telegram. You have tribal leaders saying, we need someone else, right? Not all the tribal elders, but the majority of tribal sons, right? And the biggest one that's coming up right now, the biggest name at the moment, is Queen Noor's son, right? Hamza, the half brother of King Abdullah, who was supposed to be king, right? Who was supposed to be king, but was removed by King Abdullah, right? And that left a lot of people angry because Prince Hamza, is seriously liked, respected by tribal elders. He knows the Bedouin mentality. He knows how to talk to them. He dresses that way. He sits down with them like an old-fashioned way of 500 years ago, while King Abdullah and his son are more westernized, and his wife has gone through this global standing. They're very popular. They go to to hoity-toity fancy events in the West. So the King Abdullah family is seen as Western, while Hamza, even though his mother is an American, is seen as a Bedouin Jordanian. But in addition to that, ladies and gentlemen, you have a problem. You have these roads are being blocked, whether it's with Israel, whether it's with Syria, whether it's with Saudi Arabia. The goods cannot go through because it must come from UAE and Saudi Arabia to Jordan, Jordan all the way to Israel. The tribes are not allowing them to go through. So now you have American base, the military in the American base, that are either sitting in those bases, right, being attacked, not getting supplies except what is airlifted, and that's dangerous itself because you can get hit by missiles and you can only get certain things. You can't get fuel, for example. And then you have the tribes at the same time going in, you need to go. And by that I mean, ladies and gentlemen, is that you have the tribes blocked everywhere. And so they're blocking anything that's not going to the public of Jordanian. And particularly, ladies and gentlemen, whether it's food, whether it's grain. As a matter of fact, a few days ago, and they're doing it now, they attacked the tomatoes and the potatoes and all of these things that was supposed to go for Israel. They attacked it and they trashed it. Some of them went to the poor, the other ones didn't go because the tribal leaders were saying, I don't think so. If you have to pay twice as much during Ramadan, then the Israelis are certainly not going to get our food. So for King Abdullah, he has a massive problem. It's got between United States that's demanding control your tribes and it's tribes who they say kick out the United States. Now, it's exceptionally important to understand something. And I want to let the public know all of these bases in Bahrain, in UAE, in Jordan, in Kuwait, they think our American soldiers are out there. Most of them are in those places, but a certain part of them are no longer in the base. They have been putting hotels, like in the case of Bahrain and Dubai. That's why the hotels were hit because the American servicemen were staying at the hotels. What you have rumors now, ladies and gentlemen, you're seeing him on Telegram, you're seeing him on the social media, some of the Americans where you have the desert area, whether it's Kuwait or whether it's Jordan, what you have even in Saudi Arabia, you have some of these poor American soldiers staying in the desert at night, traveling at night with no GPS in order to stay safe and perhaps they can get out. And so, what you have now, you have these Jordanian tribes going in throughout the desert, figure out where the Americans are, see what's going on, and then send the information either technologically somehow, whatever system they're using, or literally the old fashioned way, right? One shepherd gives it to another shepherd, gives it to another shepherd. So that's dangerous for the United States because not only militarily, they know where we are, but they're not getting the supplies, they're not getting the equipment they need. And in terms of political power, ladies and gentlemen, there could be a possibility. And as days go on, that the Hashemite kingdom will stay, but King Abdullah will not be the king for the next few weeks. It could be another young man, or it could be, an older man, someone else. So Jordan is exceptionally important, ladies and gentlemen. If there is a conflict, a massive conflict in which King Abdullah has to come in and literally move these tribes by force, you will have an explosion that will seriously impact, right? Seriously impact the American bases. Because remember, these tribes are not just providing uh, information to the Iranians and their allies, but they're also preventing supplies going through. So I want my audience to keep an eye on Jordan, to see what's going on, to if they hear anything, because that is very important. I know everybody's talking about the bases and the Iranians and the Kurds and the American. I get that. But my job is to give you a different perspective, right? So in this case, Jordan is a massive problem for the US. And so tomorrow we are going to discuss Bahrain because that's also another monarchy could fall. These two monarchies, Jordan and Bahrain, are in many ways in a situation of a collapse with a new leadership. So let me know what you think. Please give me your opinion. I see you tomorrow. Take care.